And we're on. So we're here today with DJ Ms. Margo from Portland. Would you like to tell us a little bit about you? Just
Oh my
brief,
goodness.
like, who are you?
Who am I? I am a New Jersey raised gal, currently living in Portland, but
Coast to
via
coast.
New York City and San Francisco, then New York City, and now Portland. So I know a lot of the DJs across the country just because I've worked with so many of them in the big, either in San Francisco, down in LA, I'd go visit, and
Mhm.
then New York, and just people who would visit and DJ in New York. I'd go out to there and their guest spots and meet them there too. Same with
Okay.
in San Francisco. So yeah, and I've
Yeah.
been DJing since 1995. I think was the first time I DJ'd. So
Okay.
quite
How'd you
a
end up getting?
time.
How'd you get started with that?
um, I was mostly helping out with a club. I was doing door at a party in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Um, I've been going to clubs for a while, and I think it was just I'm trying to remember which club that was. It might have been Bedlam, and we had a couple of resident DJs, but then we would have lots of guest DJs, and then me and my partner at the time used to kind of be on the lookout and uh, sort of talent searching for other DJs that maybe weren't out and on the scene,
Mhm.
and so we definitely got a handful of DJs, just like was pre even well, I don't know if it's pre CDs, but people were giving us mixtapes. I was
Yeah.
asking for mixtapes
Mhm.
of their mixes. Um, Definitely, I know he was DJing before that, but one of the DJs was DJ Sage at Death Guild, and
Mm.
and we brought his mixtape to the guy who was doing that event, and then he just became a favorite. We loved having him, and when that, I think I was just like, I need to try this
Yeah.
DJ thing. I love music so much, and I'm always out, and I think I did a night there or something, and then I did some other collaborations with some other promoters around that time with an event called Mass that we were doing like spring, fall, winter, summer,
Mhm.
and I think we got one or two of them under our belts, but and that was Alex Zander from Cat Club
Mm.
and Dancing Ghosts. We did that project together, and that was like 95, 96,
Okay.
97. And then in 99, Sage and I started doing uh Dark Sparkle,
Mm.
and I had done a little guest spots here and there, but then Dark Sparkle became our thing, and that's where
Yeah.
I really cut my teeth and really uh, not cut my teeth, sank my
Yeah.
teeth into the career of DJing
Yeah.
to really get used to like keeping a dance floor going
Mhm.
and playing, because I my goal was to also like introduce music that I thought
Right.
wasn't getting as much exposure,
Yeah.
as well as at the time Marilyn Manson was starting to become really popular, and especially at the goth clubs, and I was like, there's so much stuff that goth
Right.
clubs don't even play
Yeah.
that I love, that is like fundamental to
Mhm.
what goth music is.
Yeah.
So with Dark Sparkle, we tried to play stuff people knew, but then be like, but do you know Brian Eno, Baby's
Right.
on Fire?
Right.
You
Right.
know, T-Rex. If you love Bowie and
Yeah.
Bauhaus, you should probably know some Mark Bolan. So
Yeah.
we did a whole range of stuff, and we did that for a long time. And then from there, I spun out doing guest spots and co-DJ stuff and other projects, and
So
just kind of took off from there, I guess.
when you were introducing, some of those classics to people,
Mhm.
being, a club, how were you letting people know what it was that you were playing?
Most times it was just sort of like when the songs I would pick were just something that got me here.
Mhm.
That like, this classic goth or death rock or whatever song that
Mhm.
is socially accepted in our genre. And then I play something that was just like so similar because it basically influenced it, and people would just come running up and be like, what is this? This is
Oh, okay.
amazing.
Yeah.
Also Dark Sparkle, we Sage was amazing in this. I have to give him tons of props because he always organized this and mastered them and put them together. We did lots of compilations. Every
Mm,
year on our anniversary, we put out a compilation, and the anniversary one was a mix of me and Sage's stuff.
yeah,
And it was always like a 1 or 2 disc set. And then on the holidays, we would do a 2 disc set, and it was like his selections and my selections. And
yeah,
so it had the names of all these songs, and we give them away as free. They were like, "Thank you for being support," and we make sure to hand them to the people
right.
who were like regular
Yeah,
customers, patrons of our events. So
cool.
it was our way of thanking our scene and our people. And so then they could see like, oh, that song you always play is Baby's on Fire. That's so awesome.
Right, right, right.
And then they
Yeah,
would go and dig out stuff themselves. So
yeah,
people found a lot of music that way.
yeah.
And
Well, we were talking about before we started recording was the importance of compilations
yeah,
back
yeah.
then. That was how, we didn't have internet,
Couldn't
it
go
was,
listen
yeah,
to the stuff online. You had to.
yeah. So that was one of the ways you discovered music was you buy,
You're a
you
broke
know,
teen. You're just like,
yeah,
I guess I can buy
I can
one
afford
record. I'll
one
get
record.
an
Yeah.
album.
So you look at it, does the cover art look cool? Or is there at least one band you like? Or is it a label that you've heard of, that they put some good stuff out?
I
And then
definitely
you just
bought Floodland for the cover because I did not know what the Sisters of Mercy were
mm,
back in the 80s. I'm like, that looks cool. She looks pretty.
yeah. I did get to learn a lot about music from the club I went to as a teenager called
Mhm.
Medusa's in Chicago because they
Nice.
had a video room upstairs. And
Nice.
so I would dance downstairs, not know what, some of the stuff was. There were songs that took me ages to figure out because they weren't playing those same songs in the
Mhm.
video room. Because in the video room, you see the name, right?
Oh,
And so that's how I learned about a lot of different bands.
and in the video room, you had the audio going of the
Yeah.
video and
Oh
not the
yeah.
pipe in from downstairs. Oh,
Right.
that's cool.
Yeah. So it was all music videos.
Cool.
And all, good stuff like you know, um, there was Susie and there was um Skinny Puppy and all that, you name it, all that kind of music would be
Great classics. Yeah.
like, yeah, and this was like when they were all coming out,
Right, right.
right? It's like,
They weren't
here's
overplayed at that point. You were
right,
just like, what is this?
like
This
I
is what
remember
brings my soul.
the premiere of the video for Stigmata
Yeah.
was at this club.
Oh, nice.
As yeah,
Oh, in
so
Chicago.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
big
yep,
time.
yeah. So yeah, so that compilation is definitely a great way to learn about music.
For sure.
Um,
Well,
so
I also worked in record stores.
well, that helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't until I moved out to California though. So in New York, well, I wasn't DJing in New York. I was just going to lots and lots of clubs.
Yeah.
But when I moved to California, I also was working in record stores. So that was part of what fed me into starting
Yeah.
DJing as well, because I was
Okay.
around so much music. So I was like, I think I know what I could play.
Yeah, exactly.
I got access.
So this kind of segues into one of my opening questions for everybody is, what does music mean to you?
I can't even explain it. It's primal. It's moves me. I've never been the kind of person that wanted to ever play an instrument. That part of never came out of me. I know a lot of my friends, they like couldn't help but pick up a guitar or play
Mm,
piano or whatever. But for me, it just always hit me here. I'm more of a dancer. So music has just always been something that's just been very visceral and just it moves me. As a little kid, I just hear music and
yeah.
dance around. And I, yeah, I think also there's just so many different sort of cultural things around it, like like whether it's culture, like different in different locations on this earth all
Mhm.
have music, but then also different subcultures like goth and industrial, and it just that's what started to speak to the creative side of me. So
Yeah.
um and putting it all together was such a great package.
Yeah.
But I think it's just that it was always so visceral. It just always hit me here, and
Yeah.
I, I'm not saying I'm an expert mixer or anything, but the way I DJ is definitely from the gut. Like,
Yeah.
just I hear a
What?
song and then I'm just like, I know what goes after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it may be something completely not related. And people are like, what, how that goes together? How did you think? And I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It just comes, it just
It
blur.
just comes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the same for me. That's a lot of times when I make a request, it's like I'll hear a song. It's like it reminds me of this, and it's like this would go perfect afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of times, that depending on the DJ, that'll end up getting played.
Yeah.
Sometimes that was already going to get played.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I totally feel you in terms of the how music gets to you and the dance. When I was a kid, I would watch Soul Train, American Bandstand, and all of that. And for a long time, besides wanting to be an astronaut, my other dream career was to become a dancer.
On Soul
It was
Train.
very, yeah.
American Bandstand.
Um,
Yeah.
so I love dancing. When I was in high school, I was the first one out on the dance floor at dances. I would dance. I always said if there was a beat, I could dance to it.
Hmm.
There was nothing I
Yeah.
couldn't dance
I
to.
love going to school dances for that reason. Like, I wasn't socially awkward. I just want to, I can go dance and there's a dance floor. And I'm not
Yeah,
like, I don't care who asked me. I'm just going to go because I want to dance.
yeah. And the way I've always danced was, especially in the last couple of decades, what I tend to do is close my eyes when I'm
Hmm.
dancing, not because I'm shy or anything, but I'm focusing in
Hmm.
on some aspect of the song. So the music might be saying something to me, or the bass line, or the keyboards, or the vocals, or and I just follow that, and
Exactly.
and and I dance the way it makes me
Feel.
feel like it wants me to dance.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then I watch people there. I mean, if it's what works for you, it's great.
Right.
They're just like, just the beat. And I'm like,
Mhm.
there's so much more in here. I need
Yeah.
to do the whole thing.
Right. But you got to have
That's what
space.
goth
That's
was perfect for.
You got to have the space on the dance floor though to
Yeah.
do what you
Well,
want.
when it would be a song and nobody else knew, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I know this song, and the
Yep.
dance floor is mine. It was always the
Exactly.
best.
Yep. Yeah,
I
definitely.
do remember back to sort of roots is in New Jersey before MTV was it was just starting, but a lot of the little towns hadn't quite gotten the cable brought
Right.
out to the town yet, and ours was a late bloomer for sure. And so the UHF channels were picking up the slack of
Mhm.
cable being brought in and people who didn't quite have it yet. And in the part of New Jersey I'm from, in central New Jersey, was a channel called U68. Is UHF channel 68. And
Mhm.
it was all videos, and it was all alternative
Wow.
videos. So that's, I mean, and at the time, like Howard Jones was alternative, and
Yeah.
Depeche Mode and Susie and Cure
Yeah.
and
Yep.
Sisters. And so it was all like new wavy and like the goth new wave stuff.
Yeah.
And so I already had like a good foundation just because I would just come home from school and U68 was on, and it would just be on until I
Oh
go to
wow.
bed at night. And so I knew a lot of the bands that way. And then I'd poke my mom and be like, can we go to the mall? And I go
Mhm.
buy Cocteau Twins tapes, or I go and buy Susie tapes.
Yeah. So that was like just 24 hours a day music videos on a
Yeah,
UHF?
on the UHF
Wow.
channel. Maybe they might have went to sleep at like 2 or 3 or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was I was lucky to be in central New Jersey. It's like you have New York channels and Philly channels. Plus
Okay.
I was right near Princeton University. So there was Princeton University
Mhm.
and New Brunswick University had WRSU, I think,
Yeah.
and WPLJ in Princeton. And those college stations were like, they
Yeah.
were amazing. That's why I first heard Skinny Puppy, Throbbing Gristle, like so many bands. And
Yeah.
then you'd sit there and you'd wait and he'd be like, okay, and so that was blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
and blah, and you're
Yeah.
like trying to track back. Okay, that
Right.
was that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then,
Did
but I
you
would do that.
ever
And I would
did you
tape
ever
stuff off the radio.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did you ever tape the shows?
Oh, totally.
Oh yeah, I had lots of tapes of shows like that,
Yeah.
and I would go back and listen to them
That's
later.
how we did it back in the day.
Yeah. So yeah, I still have a lot of those tapes. I still have
Man,
my records all got stolen a long time ago, like
my dad sold mine.
30 years ago now. It was 1991. Um, and so I'm starting to rebuild
Hmm.
finally 30 years later. I've seen so many DJs now that really, you bring out the vinyl and just reminding me how awesome records are, right? Because what I loved about records was when just looking at the inside, right?
Yeah,
They
the
were like
art.
an encyclopedia.
Yeah,
I would read them over and over
line
again, and
notes for sure.
yeah, I loved that.
Or
I
the
loved
paper
how
that opened, and you're
yeah,
like, it's not just a one sheet; it opens. It has
yeah,
4 or 5 pages.
or has a like almost a whole book.
Yeah, that was the
Those
best.
were those were the best because you learn so much.
Hmm. And you could read
Um,
the lyrics. You're like, oh, that's what they're
the
saying.
lyrics, yeah, who was involved in which songs, right? And then you could start to see some of the patterns across. Um, then you also starting to see in those days you were starting to see some familiar names on a lot, like Adrian Sherwood.
Hmm.
you know it was everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
um but yeah, so those were the days.
Well, and that's not to jump ahead, but that's kind
No,
of
no.
what the old Banshees tribute stream that I'm doing
Yeah.
tomorrow night is about, is the fact that so many of those Banshees came from and went on to so many other bands that a lot of
Mm.
people don't realize are connected. So
Oh,
I'm excited
cool.
to be playing. I'm playing a lot of Susie and Creatures and
Yeah.
Glove kind of stuff. But then there's definitely some little songs in there that I'm like, I
Spin-offs.
bet you didn't know. And people will be like, wait, who is on this that has to do with the Banshees? I'd be like,
Cool. That's awesome.
so I'm
um
happy to do that.
yeah, so you say tomorrow, but when this airs it'll be
Right.
in an hour or so. We'll be doing it.
You'll be
uh
able to go, and then if you're watching it after the fact, you can go on my Mixcloud and check
oh
out
yeah.
the Banshees stream and listen to it there.
Yeah, but you can't see it, right? It's
Can't
just
see
the
it.
sound.
No,
Yeah,
that's Friday.
but oh well. That reminds me, back when I was, going to that Club Medusas, they had a post in the video booth. They had a poster on the inside of the door to the booth that was the cult family tree.
Oh, the Cult
Right.
family.
Yeah, so like all the bands associated
Oh yeah,
with
yeah, yeah. I know that
right,
poster.
the Southern Death
Yeah.
Cult, and all the branches of the people who were
Right,
in
right,
the
right.
band, and I was like, wow, that was my first real kind of like exposure to just
Like,
how,
oh, it all.
yeah, how fluid, bands are in terms of the membership and where,
Right,
who goes where. It's not like you're in a band and this is who you are for the next 20 years. you
right.
know it's very fluid.
I think I saw that cult tree when I was looking. I was looking for a banshee tree to
Mhm.
try, because I watched a banshee documentary and I saw like a corner of one where and that had like John Klein and Specimen, and I was like, oh, I want to find that graphic. Because I was hoping to use it in like some promotion stuff, but I couldn't find that. But I did see that cult one that you're talking about.
So here's what you can do during your show.
Hmm.
Have people make one while you're playing it, right? So just start building a tree. Like, so each time you bring in something different, it's like,
Hmm.
start making that connection so people have their own like kind of a takeaway
Sit at
of,
home and draw your own tree.
yeah, no, it would be cool. I'd do it.
Okay.
So I may be the only one,
Stay
but
at
hey,
home.
I I I bet you some people will do it.
It'd
um,
be
because
interesting.
people like to learn, right? And when we're watching streams, we are sometimes drinking and don't exactly remember everything, or because we're on our computers or our phones or whatever, we're easily distracted by something else, and so we don't quite catch everything.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it might be a fun thing. Yeah, or maybe you do a point, use your points for
Oh, yeah.
what's the connection, or something like
I'm
that.
thinking I'm probably just talking a lot during this stream. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously the creatures and the banshee stuff and the glove stuff is pretty obvious. And even if I throw in a Cure song, that's pretty
mhm,
obvious.
right.
But I think when I start throwing in some of the like, how about this? I'll make sure at some point to be like, so,
Wait a minute. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good.
and so that it's logged in the audio part, because since the Mixcloud won't have the chat,
Right.
the typed chat, I'll like try
Yeah.
and I've been thinking about like how I'm going to do this all that.
Yeah. No, that like I was saying before we started recording, that's those little bits where the DJs share information.
Mhm.
um, is something that viewers I've talked to lots of people that agree that that's something they really like. I mean, the music's important, but the little bits, just a minute or two or three, or depending on who you are, five, in
Yeah.
between some stories,
I think about
are
that because I do have a lot of stories, and then I
yeah.
usually just start type a little bit about it in the chat, but I don't know, I don't know if you noticed this, but I feel like, dare I say, I feel like guys are happier to talk and brag about that stuff, and
Mm,
I just feel awkward being like, "Oh yeah, I met so and so, and I know, and I did this,
right.
and I did that." Like, I don't know if it is a male female thing, but I see it a lot with the guys. They're all like,
Yeah.
"Yeah," and like, I'm like, I got a lot of stories like that, but
I
I
don't
guess
know that.
I can tell 'em.
Yeah. Well, I've teased Zaya about bragging, because
Uh-huh.
what he'll do a lot of times is he'll put up a record and it's got an autograph. And so I'll tease him about, it's like, you're showing off again. He's like, I just happen to have all these signed. I'm not showing off. I'm just showing the
And
record.
I'm like, "Do you wanna see my Diamanda Galas one?" Where she, like, hugged me and was telling me she's like, "Where did you get this record? This is You're so pretty. Of course, I love you. I'll sign your record." And I'm like, "What? You're saying that to me? I love you. You're amazing. Please sign my record." And she's like, "I'd love to." And I'm like, "Okay."
Well, that's a cool story.
Yeah, you're imagining like, "Ah!" And then she's just like, "I love you." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll hug you."
Yeah. Well, it is true though that people like to hear the stories. And it's not, I don't think for the most part they're not coming across as bragging.
Mhm.
It's not like I know so and so, but just sharing, little tidbits. Like,
Well, because
did you know
DJing
this?
provides us with an
Right.
experience of being able to be in a position that other people,
Exactly.
like, I've gotten to DJ shows at the Fillmore in San Francisco where
Mhm.
I was just like the opening DJ up in the lounge, but like I ended up getting to meet the artist because I was
Yeah.
working.
But you just generally will know more about the music than most people, because that's your life, right? Well,
Mhm.
other people, have their 9 to 5s,
That's true. I've
right? So
definitely
they just
dedicated my life, like,
aren't
this
gonna
is my
know.
job and my love and
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah. So don't be shy about, sharing little stories.
Yeah.
It's not bragging. It's just adding more value. And I'm a business professor, so I got to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
It's adding more value to the stream.
And I try and think about that stuff all the time when I'm at home just kicking around and doing music stuff or not on Twitch, and just sort of like in my brain's always like, what
Mhm.
else could I do that's interesting for people and engaging for people that isn't like I want to give to people.
Yeah, exactly.
But
And
I'm like, what do I have to give that I feel comfortable doing? And like, what else could I do to, that's why I like my streams all have different looks to them. So it's like,
yeah,
not just look at the same screen of me, just like, I'm DJing. It's
yeah.
like, I try and talk and I try and do like my silly side, my box openings, my
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Cenobite lament
Yeah.
configuration opening,
And the movies in the background,
and movies in the background,
like
and I think
Alien.
about which movie, yeah. I think about what movies go with what streams, so
Mhm.
trying to like just making it a whole
Yeah.
encompassing experience, and not just, I mean, even down to like sometimes the things I'm wearing, like one of my sleepwalk effigy nights, I kind of drew from Blade Runner, and
Oh, cool.
what's her name from Blade?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah, and so
about.
my
Yeah,
look was a lot of that sort of
right.
futuristic 40s look,
Yeah.
and people were just like, and I was playing Blade Runner in the background, and I was just like, so it's
Uh,
like that cybery.
yeah,
And then the
yeah.
last effigy, I did all the alien, the xenomorphic stuff.
Cool. Cool. Yeah.
So
So you should talk. You can definitely talk more about that
yeah,
for sure.
uh,
It just, little tidbits in between here and
yeah.
there. We
I
want,
think sometimes I like the subtlety. I'm like, I'm
yeah,
giving you the whole picture, and if you're picking up on the things that I'm giving you, that's awesome. And if you don't, and you just feel like it's all going together, but you don't even realizing it, then that's fine too.
yeah.
It just for
Well,
me, I like being able to.
yeah. Well, I think people would appreciate um, just that added knowledge, and then just trying to, I guess, the people who do get it already without you saying,
Mhm.
um, they'll be typing in chat about it, and so
True.
if you're watching the chat while you're, if you can't, it's hard to manage all that.
It's a
You
lot.
can,
I don't
it's
have any
easy to,
helpers
yeah,
necessarily. I mean, my partner will like definitely check and make sure everybody's staying in line
yeah,
and like spam and stuff like that. But I don't, I'm doing it all myself. I don't have
yeah.
somebody helping me with one end or doing some other thing. It's definitely.
Well, that might be, something where you can say, hey, so and so, you just won some points, because you recognized this or that, and then you say
I don't
a
think there's
little bit
any
about
way
it.
we can dole out extra channel points to
No,
people.
I mean
I know.
Zlaya's got these couple of things, like you get lifetime of free car wash in Kalamazoo, you know,
Right. So like faux
right.
pro- there's a
Lifetime
whole lot
tickets
of things that's
to
like
Bauhaus
person
shows,
talked about his stream
yeah,
that I'm like, you nut
yeah,
job.
yeah.
I love him.
So, and it could be easily something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, kind of want to segue a little bit here. Um, Speaking of chat, in your channel, there was one time I remember we were getting into a political discussion about something. I don't know what it was, and I was starting to type away, and I'm like, wait, I know some people don't want politics, right? They just
Mhm.
this is an escape. Keep all that stuff out. Let's not worry about that. And others are bring it on. And so I remember writing to you, and your response was, "Goth is always political."
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think, I mean, yes, we are here to sort of escape and have a break from some of the insanity that happened throughout this year.
mhm,
But I think if that's what you want, then it's fine. You can just listen for and not
mhm,
be engaged in chat. Like you have that ability. And then
right,
the people who need to come together and do want to talk and do want to engage with other people about it in a more what's that called? Where not static, but engage,
dynamic
dynamic
engagement.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Whereas on Facebook, you like post a comment on
right,
something and then you have to wait till they get a lunch break or when they're able to respond. Whereas in chat, you can kind of have an engaged
right,
conversation.
right, right.
And it's like you can choose to be a part of that or not be a part of that. And I'm all for letting people have a social forum to be able to talk about that as long as
Mhm,
things don't get slamming other people for their points of view unless it's like they're Trumpist type or they're like knocking anybody.
right,
Yeah, whether they're if they're racist or they're homophobic or any of that stuff, like no hate speech.
right, right.
If you're talking politics and you're talking about dynamics and stuff like that,
Mhm,
that's I'm fine with that. I mean, yes, goth is political and Mistress McCutcheon and those folks all have a clothing line Kaufin and they're all about it. I'm so
yeah.
happy. And Hate Me Or, I think is part of that as well. Kaufin clothing
Okay.
up in Toronto. Hate Me Or,
Yeah.
Mistress McCutcheon. I think they're and Mistress McCutcheon's partner, I think all are doing that clothing line. And yeah,
I'm
I'm
not familiar with that. What is?
Kaufen, which is the
Yeah.
German word for shop.
Right, right, right.
So they have a clothing line. It's all very goth based. It's like coffins and all
Okay.
kinds of like spooky ooky things. But they have a line that says goth is political, and then underneath goth there's a line that says like a line from a Bauhaus song, and under is there's a line from like a Sisters of Mercy song or something, and then under political is like Killing Joke, or because all these bands, we've all, the goth scene, the one thing is people embrace what they feel, and
Right.
it's not always just about like my love, she went away. It's like
Right.
we're angry about the state of things.
Yep.
And they're either like empowerment songs, or they're like fuck the government songs, or just like here's the state of things and
Right.
the atrociousness of it. And yeah, I mean, you go back to those days and then you come forward to current bands,
Yeah.
they're
Well, I
definitely
mean,
Detoxy. I mean, there Mystic Priestess, Otzi, all of the so many new bands. They're all about everything that's going on right now.
yeah, I mean, goth came out of punk, which was very political.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of like the not that punks weren't emotional, but they just like goth has the more expressive feeling part, and punk has the more like angry, let's fuck this up or smash the state.
Yeah. Well, then you've got the great mix between the two too, when it's really dark and aggressive. That's the stuff I like.
Yeah. The Ministry and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like Osico,
Oh,
it's like, great band like that, Skinny Puppy,
Skinny Puppy, definitely.
right. Um, yeah, so obviously politics in your channel are okay. And
Like I said, just hate speech.
right. But
And also don't let it turn into like that's the whole night. I really want people to have lots of conversations, but
yeah.
And I want you to have your whole fulfilled conversations, but then if you realize that it's just like sucking up 2 hours of chat, then maybe you and these folks should like whisper offline and
Right. Yeah.
get in a Facebook group and start talking together, or Zoom together.
That's where your moderator comes
I'm all for people connecting and engaging in my chats for sure.
Yep. So that's where your moderator comes in to help.
I think he would be engaging in the politics.
But you can always have more than one moderator.
I know. I've been thinking about that. Like he's great, but I also am thinking like, who else do I feel would be a good moderator, and also who would want to take on that role and responsibility? Because one of the things that I had was that I'm not like a ban hammer. It's like, yes, if you're spamming my channel and it's full on, or if you're full on like hate speeching, right from the gate, or like, are you a he, she? Like I've had a couple people come on and just say that, and I'm like, boop.
Right.
But then there's some people that come on that say stuff and you're like, I'm gonna watch and see what else they say. And I give them like 3 tries, 3 strikes and you're out. I might like delete their first comment or something like that. Or if it was gray area, I'll leave it. But then like the second one might be like, and by the third one, I'm like, ban. But it's the subtlety of like trying to figure out whether I just go, you said the wrong thing, ban, because I don't want to just do that. Some people do need to be engaging with the people who are having the political discussions to sort of go, and maybe. And
I mean,
not,
there's a difference between sharing an opposing view and being disrespectful.
Right.
Because if you go to my channel, I have my chat rule is really simple. Respect. Yeah. I mean, that kind of covers it, right? It's the only rule to me that you need. But I would recommend, and I'm happy to volunteer, to have more moderators, because I've just seen a lot of DJs that once they get more moderators running things, it makes it just so much easier. It's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah. Well, and also like if one moderator can't be on at the same time, like I don't have to expect every one of my moderators to be on every one of my streams.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to have, you know, a good 3 or 4.
Or my one moderator is like, I had to go get some food.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just need to
Um,
put something up in the kitchen, and then this whole thing happened, and I was gone, and I couldn't help you. And I was like, it's okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah.
I'll definitely.
I
You and
I've
I
been
will chat
volunteering.
after this about it.
I've been volunteering because, you know, I love to push hype trains.
Right. I
And
really appreciate that, by the way.
yeah, I'm happy to do it. But you know, so I'm always asking, you know, when was the last hype train? But as a moderator, you can look that up.
Can you?
Yeah, when you go into the moderator, I just
Oh,
Cirque just made me a moderator, so that's the first time.
mhm.
And it's like this whole new
Moderator
world just
view.
opened
Yeah.
up, like this whole new view, right? Because it's a different
That
screen.
we're all used to as DJs.
Yeah.
'Cause we have so many bells and
Well,
whistles.
it's a little bit different from it's similar, but it's a different view for a
Right.
moderator. And so it's like, oh, okay. And I learned this from interviewing Doll Baby Tina, because she is known for moderating multiple channels.
Oh,
Um, and so I learned from her that moderators know when the last hype train was.
okay.
So
I
there's
do it.
like,
I just sort of watch the hype train, and when it
yeah,
ends, I'll be like, oh, it ended at
right,
10:57, so we have until 11:57 before the
right,
cooldown. And I usually will get a blurb on my
yeah.
screen.
The moderators can look and see events, and so they could see when the last hype
Oh,
train was.
okay,
And
cool.
so that would be useful for me in a lot of channels to know, because there's been a few times where I've tried to start a hype
I've
train. It's
seen
like,
that, and you're like, here's
we
100
just
points.
had
When's the last
one.
hype train? I'm like, oh,
Like,
it just happened a half hour ago.
yeah. So I've learned to ask. It's like, okay, I enter a stream. It's like, okay, let's get this out of the way. When was the last hype train?
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I like to do.
Mhm.
It's a way I know I can help.
Yeah.
I've kind of discovered lately I've been
To
spending maybe a little
know.
bit too much. But so I may not be throwing as many bits and subs as I have been. Uh, but I definitely like pushing them, pushing the hype trains, get more people involved, because I know a lot of DJs that, you know, this is their livelihood, and people don't realize that. I know DJs, you know, can feel awkward about, you know, asking,
Mhm.
right? Nobody likes to ask for help,
Right.
right? So that's where I come in. I don't mind.
Yeah, I feel like I can sort of be like, "Hype train, we're on a level 2. Feel free to chuck some bits and subs at me,"
Yep.
but I don't feel like pushing it much more than that.
Yeah.
I'm saying like, "You're appreciated, and if you feel
Yeah.
like appreciating me."
That's why I created the emotes that I did, and why I
Yeah.
give away subs, so that people have those emotes to use to push hype trains.
Yes.
So it's, again, it's at least something I can do to help.
Thank you.
It makes me feel good to help.
Yes.
But it's just, you know, I know, so I know Dan in Chicago, DJ 11 Chicago, is involved with Darkest Before Dawn,
Mhm.
which is the charity that goes along with Cold Waves, right?
Right.
And they're focused on helping people in the nightlife industry um, deal with life, right? It's, you know, it's some of the highest rates of suicide, addiction, depression, mental illness, all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, right? So I was already aware, you know, from talking with Dan and having my students even working on projects related to that, just, you know, knowing how difficult that life is.
Mhm.
And so on top of what was already difficult, and now you've got COVID, right? And the shutdown and the main form of income. And top that off with, you know, unemployment offices not really
Responding.
figuring out
Vague with
how,
how
right.
you gotta proceed to the next level or
Well, no, just figuring out how much somebody should be getting when
oh.
when their income was based on tips,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I was also a
Yeah,
bartender in the before time,
yeah.
so
exactly. Yeah. So, I know like Dan had mentioned, getting, checks for $35 for unemployment because that, the wage he got was, $2 an hour or something like that.
Yeah, we are lucky in Oregon that we don't have a service wage, but
Mhm.
I know some states have service minimum wage, which is like $3 or $5. It's
Or
ridiculous.
less. Yeah.
And an hour. And here, at least, it's like what minimum wage is here, which I think
Mhm.
at time of closing was like 12.75 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was our minimum wage as bartenders as well.
Okay.
So I was a bartender. So yes, I missed out on a lot of tips, but at least I was getting minimum wage and not service minimum wage, which
Yeah.
is like, I can't. The time I did live in New York when minimum wage, I think when I got there was like $7.50 or $8 an hour. I was like, in New York City, I just moved from San Francisco where it was $10.50 an hour. And I was like, how can people live on minimum wage in New York City and then forget
Mhm.
about service minimum wage and trying to live off of your tips
Yeah.
and then trying to get unemployment based on your service?
Right. And that gets into, people, say, well, why can't you, improve your life, right? Go to school. It's
Right.
like, well, I can't go to school because I have to work two jobs because the one job doesn't pay enough, right? So I don't have time to go to school and I don't have money to go to school.
Well,
So,
not to mention that this country doesn't really help the arts unless you're
right.
like on like this super like I can sell a painting for $1 million kind of level.
Yeah.
It's like if you work in what we do,
Hmm.
bands and DJs and music and dance and performance, it's
Yeah.
like it's just seen as like, oh, that hobby that you do. And
Right.
it's like for so
Right.
many of us, it's like if I wanted to go to school for something, this is what I
Right.
and make a career of it. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the problems of, this things like that being free,
Hmm.
right? I mean, Twitch is free. A lot of clubs, if you go early enough, it's free
In
to get
Portland,
in,
almost
right?
all of the goth clubs are free.
Yeah. So
They're
people
like
do not
paying $5
associate,
is like is
they
there
don't
a plan
associate the music to a monetary value.
that somebody's gotta work to keep you
Yeah.
dancing for the next 5 hours and
Yeah.
entertained and basically
Yeah.
providing the entire soundscape for the evening while
Right.
you
It,
drink your
it,
cocktails?
people do not realize that. And so that's something, that somehow we need to bring more attention to.
Mhm.
Like when I had my students doing research into Darkest Before Dawn, um, it was just two students, but they were like, their views were changed forever. It's just like, they were like, I had no idea, life was like that for, people, right? Um, and some talking about how, being a bouncer is like being a cop with
Yeah,
those, moments of
I do that
extreme,
too.
yeah, extreme adrenaline, right? When something's going on. But, you know, how do you come down from that?
Mhm.
Right. And so it's just, yeah, it's mind-boggling that we don't appreciate people in industry as well as we should. So that's another reason why I do what I do with the hype trains and everything, is it's at least try and I try to explain to people, you know, hey, um, most DJs are relying on this for income to pay the bills.
Mhm.
And if not, they're using it to be able to buy equipment or music to keep entertaining you.
Or
It's not
both.
free, right? They're not sitting at home rich.
Yeah.
It's not like you're making a fortune off of Twitch. Hey, I'm a poet. um,
Basically
so
just making the same.
yeah. So I guess that would be kind of like one of my causes. I have lots of them. Um, but is there anything that you're kind of passionate about, like
Um,
cause wise or just
well, definitely animal welfare stuff,
okay?
which is being vegan, sort of an
Yeah.
extension thereof,
Okay.
and supporting shelters and not supporting breeders.
Right.
And then just equality rights, definitely. POC and trans rights are
Yeah.
pretty important and close to my heart.
Yeah.
Very much so.
That's good.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, you have that on your page, like
Yeah,
everyone's
sometimes
welcome.
I have my links without getting it too crowded. Every once in a
Yeah.
while, I'll put it in as one of the things like, if you want to support something I believe in, here's a link, and I'll change it out every once in a while.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good.
But
Yeah.
it's just with my like links where like, I don't know if there's anything up right now because I was changing it. And but definitely during all the hullabaloo this summer, there were links to supporting like Portland Bail Fund and
Mhm.
different groups here in PDX
Yeah.
that definitely could
And there was
do
definitely a lot
support.
going on. Definitely a
Yeah,
lot going on in Portland.
there is still, yeah.
Still now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the streams that I followed early on Twitch is Woke.
Woke. Yeah. So
Yeah.
did we.
So I should see the, you know, the protests
Every
and
night
stuff
you
like
click
that.
on it, it's like Portland, Portland, Portland,
Yeah.
Portland.
It's like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Well, not funny, but anytime I notice that Woke has like more than 1,000 viewers, I'm like, what's going on? And I'll click
Mm,
on it to see what
yeah.
city, what kind of actions are happening, and sort of keep tabs of different local, not local Portland, but local to
Hmm.
each city's kind of things. And
Yeah.
I actually just turned my mom onto that. Like my mom pops onto Twitch every once in a while and watches my stream.
Yeah.
And the other night, there was an action happening here at the ice building in Southwest Portland, and they were protesting it. But then, of course, all the police and National Guard were out in force,
Well,
and just all the people were doing were banging drums and protesting, and there was some
mhm.
spray paint. Ooh,
Yeah.
but they came out full force with like tear gas and rubber bullets and just did that line of just like, and I'm like, it's a battle zone. When you watch it, it's just like smoke and bullets
Yeah.
and I'm like, it's on the Woke channel, and I was showing this to my mom. I'm like, this is what's happening just 2 miles away from here at
Yeah.
the ice building. And this is and it was like worse than this all summer downtown.
Hmm.
And she was like, oh, I had no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
she's all for our side, but
Yeah.
she's definitely liberal family I have. I'm lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing and this is my Squeaks walking past.
Yay. I
um,
don't know where he went. Oh, I think he went in his igloo.
yeah. She squeaks because she's Pipsqueak, and she's a tiny, you know, like she never got out of being a kitten, practically,
Yeah, I know. Since we walked past you, I'm like, she's little.
Yep. Yep. But I have noticed a lot and maybe self-selection, but a lot of, the goth industrial DJs are very supportive of
Yeah.
a lot of social causes, of just basic human decency,
Yes.
the acceptance, right? And I think, and you can, share your thoughts on this, but when I first got into new wave, back in the day, right, there was a very overwhelming sense of everybody is acceptable, right?
Yeah.
This is where it started to become, to me, commonplace. Like, yeah, there are gay people in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And non-white people.
it's not an issue, right? Anybody's accepted. I mean, that changed over time. I think a lot of the scene got really into, if you don't look like this, you don't belong, kind of thing, which is just stupid.
Yeah.
But there is that background, right?
Right.
Even going back to, we were talking about punk, right? Was right. It was
when you watch early punk documentaries, there's no uniform. It's like all the weirdos and freaks all came together and just like, and you could be completely normal too. Just
it was the common cause often was just being poor.
Yeah.
Or having limited prospects in life. right?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately that is more heavily weighs on people of color in this country and others.
Mhm.
But
Well, and people of not cisgendered
right,
or heteronormative.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
And so if anybody in your workplace suspects that, and then you have to live this closeted life, it's just,
yeah, yeah. That always it always surprises me when somebody says, "Well, they choose which gender they want to be." I'm like, do you realize what they go through? Who on earth
that'd be
would
so much fun
choose
to
that?
just choose your gender, right? Yeah,
Right? Who
no.
who would choose to be harassed and potentially, you
Lose
know, killed,
job, lose friends, lose family, get, yeah,
lose lose your life, right?
unsafe life, yeah.
Because we've had a pandemic of murders
Mhm,
of transgender women of color,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
Um, and that's I mean, because we had one here in Charleston.
Oh,
And that's just is one of the things that's great about this community, and we have kind of really that come together as a community. I think with Twitch has been a good
I
platform for
think,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm starting to talk too much, but
It's okay, I'm li
yeah,
I'm
yeah, um,
I'm like,
but
"Yes, I agree, yes."
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm trying not, I'm getting my
Well, that's why
perception.
I think it's
Yeah.
good to have the open forum in the chats in the way so that people can, even if they aren't participating, they can see that there's
Mhm.
support for them.
Yeah, and that people are accepting
Mhm.
of anything, and it's good. And I'll say this to everybody watching is just watch what people are saying for clues to um trouble, right? So I've seen a few times where somebody is kind of really, really signaling problems with depression,
Oh, yeah,
right? And so that's something that's spiking right now, right?
sure.
You can also tell people of color that are in the chat sometimes um don't want to necessarily reveal
Mhm.
that they're of color like that. So it's really important, I think, that channels like yours that are very open and accepting,
Yeah.
safe places for people to go.
Well, that's definitely the case, and it's definitely, a haven for them.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody, and the second I feel like anybody is being excluding or,
Mhm.
um, discriminatory, it's just like, "No,
Right.
on." And if
Yeah.
anybody in the chat notices that or feels that way, I strongly recommend them to let me know or my moderator to know, and we'll just, nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you were saying before, it's that balance of like n having an opposing view, but there's also hate speech and
Mhm.
being discriminatory.
Right.
And if we can help people see more equality
Mhm.
and maybe rethink about their ignorance,
Yeah.
then I'm all for providing that forum as well, as long as they're being
Right.
respectful and if they want to hear this the humanitarian
Yeah.
side, then I welcome them to be there, even if they have a not understanding view, as long as they're not hateful about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I
I mean, I know a lot of the people in the chat personally, and there's definitely a high number of POC folk there because I know them. I know
yeah.
who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And queer folk as well,
right.
because there's a whole lot of LGBTQIA plus
Yeah.
trans.
And it's
There's just a wonderful range of folk in my, I
yeah.
love I love them all. They're such good friends.
And that's part of what makes it a good community, right?
Mhm.
Is that because I'm teaching a course on diversity, and
Oh,
one of the
cool.
things that comes up is, um, representation,
Mhm.
right? So knowing that there are a lot of people of color that are out there
Mhm.
makes others feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
But we don't really see that in the DJs.
Hmm. Yeah, there's only a few that I can think of.
Yeah. So now you've got to get Shannon to start DJing.
Yeah, like we said, she's
Yeah.
still learning to use emojis.
Yeah. um, yeah. So what I've suggested to my colleagues in my department is to look at what they're using in their classroom and trying to make sure that they're more diverse in the representation.
Mhm.
So like when you use examples and cases and speakers and all that, make sure that there are some people of color so people start to feel like that's normal.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really like about Sark.
Mhm.
If you've ever watched him, is he weaves in a lot of people of color
In what way?
videos
Was-
in videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he makes videos.
Yeah. And he's got one, as he described it in the video, it's a black, she is black transgender goth rapper.
Ah,
And it's like, I have it written down somewhere, the name. Um, oh, what was it? Backwash or Yugen Blackrock. I
oh,
can't
yeah.
remember which one it was. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, I guess I kind of would encourage is, I know you don't really do videos. You have the
No,
movies in
I
the
try.
back, which is great.
Yeah, I try and definitely do it in representation in the music, and though you
Mhm.
can't see
Right.
color of their
You
skin, you
can't
can
see, right.
see definitely in the language.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
Yeah.
play all English speaking bands.
Right. Yeah.
I don't play just British and Americans,
Yeah.
Europeans and Americans.
And that's
Um,
good. And the idea, is that it should just be normal as
yeah,
opposed to
and that's
highlight.
I think that's why I don't like try and focus on it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like holding it up as an example because
Right.
it's not how I feel about it. I'm
Mhm.
like, I feel that this band's awesome. So,
Right.
and
Yeah. So you start hearing something you really like, and then you go out and you learn about them. It's like, oh, I didn't know that's who they were.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. Black people actually can make goth music.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's lots of, I mean, going back to, what is it from The Cure?
Andy Anderson.
Andy Anderson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks. And that was another thing is, definitely when a lot of things were starting to pick up in the summer and
Mhm.
folks were like, we need to start representing a lot of more people of color in goth bands. And a lot of people were focused on the singer.
Mhm.
I was like, there's been backline musicians that have been people of
Yeah.
color, and a lot of the bands that we love, and because they aren't the face of the band, it's like
Right.
you say that that band doesn't represent people of color. They aren't a diverse band because their singer's white.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like it's that diminishing the people, other folks in the band's existence and work
Mhm.
uh, because they aren't the front man.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously a focal point that, when people, put like the band is, very often the lead singer
Right.
just because, they're the ones that are the face
They're
of the band.
but often it's a lot of the musicians
Yeah.
in the band that are doing all the work.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
Depeche Mode.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Not that
that's
they weren't a very diverse band, but
right. But that kind of brings
I'm
me
dating
to
a drummer. I know how much work he puts into a band,
yeah,
and yet he has to sit behind everybody who gets to be all.
right.
And he's just back there driving the whole machine. And
Yeah. Yeah. Without that,
the drummer,
without the drummer, what are you going to do?
nothing.
Right. Well, you're going to have to get a drum machine at least to keep on beat.
Yes, get your Dr. Avalanche on.
But this is where I can kind of weave in a little bit of my entrepreneurship, right, that I try to do. That there's a portion in the academic research on entrepreneurship that's starting to push the idea that we have been giving entrepreneurs hero status that they don't deserve.
In what way?
That we give entrepreneurs the credit for creating something, to making this big thing happen, but they're not working alone, right?
Oh, right.
There's all kinds of people that have helped them along the way, like
Mhm.
their partners, their employees, the mentors, you know, their customers, right? That all
Yeah,
make it possible. But we put, you know, these individuals on this platform saying, look at these
and
great
Jeff
people.
Bezos do that all himself?
Right. And so I can see that a little bit with the same thing with, you know, with bands, thinking, you know, it's, you know, the singer is the one that's front and center, and, you know, kind of giving them all the credit when, you know, it's
They'd
not
be
just about
nothing
them.
without the band
Right.
and all their hard work and
Exactly.
sometimes behind the scenes doing more of the work.
Yeah. It's about much more about the interconnections,
Mhm.
right? So a band isn't going to work if, you know, they don't work well together,
Right.
right? If, you know, the styles are different, or, you know, just, you know,
Well, they can
work
be
ethic.
different as long as they can figure out how to make them mesh well.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was trying to think of the right words for that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
uh,
stumbling on words too, it's okay.
so there's another similarity between entrepreneurship and music. I try to bring that in part because you know, I want to justify that being an entrepreneurship academic, and I'm doing this is work to some extent,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
but also I want you know, DJs and musicians and all that to realize that they are entrepreneurs.
Mhm. I
Um,
wouldn't be anywhere I am today on Twitch if I didn't have half the people I've
mhm,
turned to who are also doing this or already had sort of um, a technical knowledge about how a lot of
yeah.
computer stuff work. Hi-Fi Hillary, I love you. She is my tech goddess. Like
Yeah.
anything, I'm like, I don't understand. She's like, OBS, just get it,
Yep.
download it, and then she told me some basics,
Mhm.
and I just took the basics that she got me, and just pressed all the buttons. I was like, what does that do? What does that do? And but she gave me the foundation for sure. And then
Yeah.
I definitely had other folks helping me with early screens, frames.
Mhm.
Justin Minister helped me out with that and helped me with some, with the fog that I have rolling in my
Oh,
screen.
right. Yeah.
Just like, here's a link to this free, M4A little movie
Yeah.
things that you can download, and then you use the Luma key and the Chroma key and you adjust those for transparency. And then I was like, oh, what else is on this site, and found
Yeah.
other little trinkets and things. And I was like, and then I adjust it, and then that turns into like bats flying across my screen.
Yeah.
And my screen wouldn't be nearly as fun if I didn't have all these folks in the background helping me and who are willing to work with me.
Yeah.
But I'm also here to help other people too.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions about what I do on Twitch, just ask me, because I definitely am here to help too.
Yeah. Well,
Share my
I definitely need a lot of help with, if you look at my stream, it's extremely flat and boring. The interviews are really the good part of it anyway.
I definitely
You know,
spend
I don't
hours.
need all the fancy stuff. It's more focus on, you know, on the people. Um,
I do
but
spend
yes,
hours just pressing buttons and going, what does that do? What does that
right.
do? Trial error, trial error, trial error.
And
Oh, that
and
looks,
and that is exactly how entrepreneurship works,
yeah.
right?
You can tell me that works and you go with that.
You try things. I mean, there's this whole movement, lean startup, that's all about experimentation, trying little things, seeing what works. If it works, you stick with it. If it doesn't work, you try something else,
Mhm.
right? And so one of the reasons why I bring this up all the time is that I think there's a lot that people in the industry can learn from entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
taking those lessons, and there's a lot of free lessons out there, right?
Yeah, I
To
wish I
that,
connected better with the computer because I could eh, trying to like watch a YouTube tutorial or taking an online course. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
just
But there's also, once there is networking, and there's networking on Zoom, but looking into entrepreneurship groups, like the Kaufman Foundation sponsors a thing called 1 Million Cups,
1
which
million.
1 million cups, coffee cups. Yeah, like that. Yes, exactly. And the idea is like once a week gathering somewhere, um, of entrepreneurs and people that help entrepreneurs, um, just to help build that ecosystem. And so it might be worth, you know, people in the industry checking those out, just to hear what is recommended to an entrepreneur, and then thinking about how that can translate to being a DJ or being a musician.
Hmm.
Because I've argued that musicians, artists, DJs, creatives overall are entrepreneurs. There was an interesting dissertation years ago in Finland. Of course, it was uh, it was a woman who was tracking the marketing tactics of 4 death metal bands
Hmm.
in Finland,
Okay.
right? And so I thought that was the coolest thing, is making this argument that these death metal bands are entrepreneurs.
Well, there
Um,
are,
I mean, if you
whether you
define
like
an
death metal or not.
yeah, if you define an entrepreneur as somebody who is creating something new, all right, fulfilling an unmet customer need, right?
Yes.
That's what you all do.
Good.
Um, you
Like
just
you
don't
said,
make the money
it,
of
yeah.
Jeff Bezos,
Right.
right?
Who does?
Right. So that's one of my missions, is to try and get people to see that, and if I can somehow translate my knowledge and entrepreneurship to everybody to help them out, I'm happy to do it. I'm really bad about giving away my knowledge and expertise for free all the time. It's especially bad like when I'm taking like Uber or Lyft, and I'm coming home drunk, and I'm the driver's like talking about owning a business, and I'm just like saying, oh, you got to do this and do that, and here's this, and email me and I'll help you out, and
Well, I might have to pick your brain because I did want to set up a brick and mortar shop at some point
Mhm.
and, you know, put my sort of fingerprint on it as far as like
Yeah.
a destination. It was going to be pretty
Mhm.
much like goth based, but um, there was a lot of different things I have interest in, and just sort of putting it together as a shop for folks to go to.
Yeah.
Um, but then I'm grateful I didn't do it during
Right.
how COVID's hit. And
Well,
people are like, well, you could start out as a shop online. And I'm like, yeah, I could, and try and get a following that way. And I just been trying to think of different ways, and
yeah.
whether that's something I really want to do, because that also becomes something you have to sort of heavily invest
Right.
in. And
Yep.
well, will I stop DJing? I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
here's
Being
some
balanced to both.
basic advice. One is, engage a community about what it is that you want to do, and get feedback, get the buy-in,
Hmm.
right? So if you just go and when on your next stream, or a month down the road or something, whatever, say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, what do y'all think? And get the feedback.
Yeah, yeah.
um, because a lot of startups do is, particularly if they're going through like a fundraising, like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something like that, is you build up a community before you launch it,
Right.
so
Which
that
is
when
what I
it
was thinking about
launches,
with that.
it goes and zooms up really quick, and then gets that that priority and all
Mhm.
that. All right, so it's all about engaging community, and so you have that platform already with
Yeah.
Twitch, right? The other thing is to think about um, everything you think about your business, of what it would be, is a guess or a hypothesis.
Of
So
course.
how can you test, how can you break it down into different bits that you can test, right?
Right.
So thinking about an aspect of it, right? How can you test that somebody would be interested in that? And that's,
Well, I mean, and that's why I started with that little Redbubble shop. I was like, let's see if people are interested in these
yeah,
designs or whatever, just being silly, having fun. And then
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, a lot. I'm thinking about all. I'm going to be relocating down to Oakland this
mhm,
spring to go be with my partner and back with my Bay Area community, which I'm really excited about and looking forward
I
to.
bet, yeah,
So obviously at this point, I'm not looking to sort of
right.
put anything roots wise down here in Portland. And right now, I've been using a lot of this not going to work other than streaming, and been putting a
Mhm,
lot of brain power into to my streams. But I've also been thinking like, well, what do I want to be doing? Because um usually I work a lot of different, a lot of great, fun, amazing jobs
mhm,
um in real life, but I don't have a specific career kind of thing. And how I can pull that all together uh and be doing it for myself as opposed to for
yeah.
somebody
Well, the
else.
other thing is just trying out little things like, you
Great.
know, yeah, I see. Yeah. Um, is, you talked about in your beginning of DJing, right, of trying out a night,
Right.
right? And you build from there. And that's exactly what you can still do,
Well, even with
right?
the Twitch, I did that. I was like, well, I know that I do
Mhm,
Tuesdays every other night sleepwalk
right.
at the bar I was working at. So I'm going to start with that. And then I was like,
Mhm,
well, I could do every Tuesday. And then I was like, I think I went on a test stream once to just play something out for that I was experimenting with the sleepwalk thing, and a bunch of people who were followers of sleepwalk jumped on and were like, "What
yeah.
are you doing?" And I'm like, "I know, I'm just playing some music that I love," and that turned into Mondays,
Yeah.
my Monday stream. People were like, "This is amazing," and I was like, "All right, maybe I'll start doing this."
Yeah.
And then I was like, I kind of want to do a weekend thing where it's like not a no brainer, but just like from I know there's a lot of weekend streams, but I didn't want to have to be like, what's the latest and the coolest thing that's come out on Bandcamp and the stuff that
Mhm,
I'm like, you want to hear Baby Turns Blue? I've played it a million times in real life and everybody seems to play that song, but sure, it's fun. Friday's fun. So that's what Sex Beat is about, is kind of like, I will play newer obscure stuff, but not that much. And I won't think twice about playing. There's definitely kind of a no-fly list for me. There's like a
yeah.
handful of tracks that that I'm like,
No.
can I not play the Ofra Haza version? Anyway, but that's just for me. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not knocking it if other people want to play it, but that's the whole thing about Sex Beat is like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get obscure or weird on you. I'm just, the reason those songs are classics and overplayed is because they're great songs.
Right.
So.
But
Um,
what you just described is what an entrepreneur does.
Yeah, just trying out
Try a
different
little thing, learn, get the feedback, and build from that.
yeah.
So, as you're thinking about different ideas, don't try to come up with, what it's going to look like in the end.
Mhm.
Just start something small and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And that is actually the way that expert entrepreneurs think. So there was a woman at University of Virginia years ago studying under a Nobel Prize winner. So she had access to like all of these, rich CEOs that started companies, and had them go through thought exercises in scenarios and recorded them. Yeah. And what she found was a common thread among these entrepreneurs is there are certain principles that they follow that's different from everybody else. Most people think about what is the end goal and how do I get there? How do I get the resources? Right.
Yeah.
So plan the whole thing out and then try and make it happen. Whereas expert entrepreneurs do just the opposite. They say, here's what I have. What can I do with it?
Right.
Who do I know? Who can I work with? And then just start trying little things and building it up from there.
Yeah, I think I have a
and
little
never
bit of
risking more than you're willing to lose. Never
what?
risking more than never
Oh,
risking more
right.
than you're willing to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
Um,
I'll start selling used books online.
you can
And then I'll
try
become the
anything.
world's richest man somehow,
Yeah.
selling used books online.
Well, one of the tips I always give the
Maybe
students
that's how we started.
is look for people complaining about something.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's how I started DJing, was people
Yeah.
were like, "I hate Marilyn Manson. I want something
Yeah.
good." And all these clubs are just playing either oons, 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 or like Marilyn Manson shit. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I know what, and I'm complaining in
Yeah.
the sidelines too. And I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and complain. I'm just gonna do it. And if people show up,
Exactly.
they show up. And if they don't, they don't. But I get to play what I want to. I
Right.
think, yeah.
And that's so entrepreneurial,
Yay.
right?
I'm
Yeah.
entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a term that I'm also trying to help redefine because it has a stereotype of being, a white man's thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm going through this whole process right now of trying to get more women of color in particular in my classes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so one thing that's come up is to change the name of classes from entrepreneurship to business owners.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think entrepreneur, you think of Jeff Bezos, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Or I think like the opposite. I think of like hobbyist.
No, yeah,
That's like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna do my little, I don't know.
But yeah, so the underlying key is just trying things out and learning, seeing what works and what doesn't. And what I always say is, the only way you know something works is whether something
Try
works
it.
is to try it.
Yep.
Yep.
Like you
So,
said, just don't risk anything more than you're willing
yep.
to.
And allow for the end product to be something you did not imagine whatsoever.
Expect. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So that's my little bit of free lessons for tonight. Well, one of the reasons ended up starting this was, I had started streaming what I wanted to stream, which was like listening to a whole album.
Hmm.
Because everybody always, just plays the same singles. And I'm like, what about this song? That song was
Listen to
really good
story.
on this album,
Yeah.
but nobody plays it,
Hmm.
But then nobody was really tuning in because I was only playing hours when nobody I was following was streaming, which meant, like, 4 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday or something like that. So, but then in talking to someone else, I talked about entrepreneurship and they're like, hey, I tune in for that. So that's how this kind of came about is, okay, how can I mix my passions,
Yeah.
music, social causes, and entrepreneurship and bring it all together. So this has been my little experiment trying it out and it's been a lot of fun so far. And I hope it keeps going and I don't know where it'll end up, but it's
That's
been
not what
fun.
we're supposed to be thinking about.
Yeah. So as we're kind of nearing the end here,
Hmm.
my final question for everybody is always, what gives you hope?
Change and joy. If
Okay.
you're willing to change and you're willing to seek joy, I think, I don't know, and love.
Yeah.
I know it's like it sounds corny, but um yeah.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I share often that, things that give me hope too, built on what we talked about, is that community that
Yeah.
we have that we're building here in Twitch.
Well, that's the love
And
part. I mean, it doesn't
yeah,
have to be like, I love you or like it's just
yeah,
like it's like love, the respect part of love,
mhm,
like
yeah,
another human being. So
yes,
I have love for you.
yeah,
And change being like I'm willing to hear or seek out new ideas
yeah,
and be open to other, you know.
yeah,
And hope is just hope that we can all move forward and find joy and find love for ourselves, because that's
Mhm.
important, which is a lot of people need to
Right.
find,
Yeah.
and for each other.
Yeah. So
Squeaks. I don't know.
yes, I see.
He's got the Zoom
Entertaining in the
up,
background
but
there.
yeah, I gotta watch my feet, my fingers and toes when he gets like this.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, so yeah, so we'll wrap up here, and in just a few minutes, we will be raiding into Sex Beat
Ah, yes.
for a
Banshee
fun night of
stream.
great music. That's one of my favorite nights to go. I do jump around a lot, but it's
I
because
know.
there's so many DJs I try to
So
support.
many good DJs. So many good DJs.
Yeah, but this is one that I'm usually there, like
Yeah.
almost every Friday at some
Yep.
point. So, but I'll
Well, you
definitely be
benefit
there.
being East Coast, so you get to do all the European and East Coast stuff
Yeah,
earlier in the day, and then end your night over in the West Coast.
it's what's funny is I think my internal clock is located somewhere in the Pacific. The way my sleep pattern and everything like that.
Mm.
Uh, it
All
doesn't
I
help that
got
a
is you're
lot of
like,
my favorite DJs are on the West Coast.
ah, that's awesome.
So I end
I
up
feel,
being up late at night.
I feel like being on the East Coast is where you have the most privilege, just because you get to get all the
Yeah.
European streams and all the West Coast streams.
Yeah.
Because like the Europeans are all asleep during my streams, and unless they're waking up early and jumping on Twitch, I don't see any of them.
Mm,
So I'm like, oh.
yeah. Well, yeah, I've seen them show
The
up like,
breakfast crew, they all show
yeah,
up.
yeah, like
Love them.
3 in the morning my time, 4 in the morning my time,
Right.
they're
And for
they're
them, they're like,
picking
it's
up.
9 a.m., it's 10 a.m., I'm having my
Yep,
orange juice.
yep,
So
yep. Got my coffee,
my
waking
music.
up to using the stream to help me wake up, get ready for work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't connect with a computer that early in the morning.
Yeah.
Sometimes there'll be a fest that's happening in like East Coast or Europe, and I'm like, okay, it's 11 a.m. They're halfway through it. I guess I'll wake up and drink my coffee and try and
Yeah. Well, it's been a great pleasure talking to you.
likewise. Thanks for asking me to do this.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking your time to sit and talk with me.
My pleasure.
And so with that, we will get ready to raid your channel.
Come and listen to some Banshees.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's a special night, right?
Yep.
As we've already kind of said, I guess.
It's a
Um,
fifth Friday. I haven't decided if I want Fifth Fridays to always be a tribute, but I was like, I'm gonna start off with that being like Fifth Friday tribute.
yeah. Well,
Maybe I'll go with it. The next one would be like April, I think, sometime.
yeah.
But for now, I'm just doing this one off tribute
It's
night.
experimenting.
Susie has always been like my starter. Like
Yeah.
that's where I started, what I love the most. And then watching all those other all the musicians that work with her be in all these other projects, and I'm just
Mhm.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to hearing some good stories and interesting tidbits that I didn't know, or that maybe I knew 30 years ago and I forgot,
oh yeah.
because I've forgotten a lot of things. So it's great. It's great when y'all share. So
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Yay. I look forward to seeing you in the chats.
All right. Great.
Thanks so much, Dave.